Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Marcos, can I just start with you? You testified a moment ago to Senator Butler that every child gets a Know Your Rights presentation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that before or after you release them to labor traffickers?
Senator, every child that comes into our care gets a Know Your Rights presentation as well as...
Have you read these New York Times reports, these stories, the series of stories the New York Times has done on the children who are in your care? Have you read them?
Yes, I have.
Have you read that children are scrubbing dishes, they are operating heavy machinery, they are delivering meals, they are harvesting coffee, they are working construction, they are working as housekeepers, they are working overnight shifts at plants where they are not paid, they are not going to school, they are not cared for, they are not giving meals, almost all of it illegally. Are you aware of that? That's a yes or no.
Yes.
Do the Know Your Rights presentation help them in those situations?
Senator, ORR...
That's a yes or no, I think. Do you really think that you're helping these children by releasing them to labor traffickers and, yes, sex traffickers? 85,000 children whom you have no contact with, and your answer is we gave them a presentation before we turned them over to these people who are exploiting them on a scale not seen in this country for 100 years, a century. A century. It's a disgrace in the United States of America. Let me ask you this. You did an audit, I noticed, where you gave yourself a clean bill of health. Just tell me this. Do you require sponsors to document their relationship with the child?
Senator, we have a thorough vetting process.
Do you require sponsors to document their relationship with the child?
Yes, we go through
No, you do not. You do not. Have you read the Senate's Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations reports on your office? There was one in 2016, there was one in 2018, there was one in 2020, there was one in 2022. Spanning administrations, what they found is you do not require sponsors to document their relationship with the child. You release them anyway. What about background checks? Do you require background checks on all adults in the household?
In cases where the child is being released to their parents, we do not require background checks. But Senator,
do you require background checks on all adults in the household in any case?
Yes, in some cases we do.
What percentage of cases do you do background checks on the adults in the household?
I don't have that number in front of me.
Do you do home visits in all cases? You can actually see where these children are being released, whose care you're putting them in?
We do not do home visits in all cases. Senator, I'd really like the opportunity to talk about what we are doing.
I know what you're doing, and it's incredibly and totally inadequate. And we can read about it in the New York Times. Since you say you've read it, let's talk a little bit about that New York Times report, if we could. Here's a quote from the April 17th installment. Again and again, veteran government staffers and outside contractors told HHS, including reports that reached the Secretary, that children appeared to be at risk. Did you warn the Secretary that children were at risk?
Senator, I'm in regular contact with the Secretary.
Did you warn him that children were at risk?
Safety and well-being of children is our top priority.
Did you warn him that children were at risk?
I'm not going to get into the conversations I've had.
You're here and you're under oath, and this is an oversight hearing, and we need to know what you're doing because you're manifestly not doing your job. Did you warn him that children were at risk? Do you believe that children are at risk? Let's start with that.
Yes.
Okay, did you warn the Secretary?
Senator, I'm not going to get into the specifics of my conversation, but I would like the opportunity
Why wouldn't you warn the Secretary that children were at risk?
I would like the opportunity to talk about what we are doing.
Let's look at what the Secretary said to you. The other one, James. Yeah, that one. At least 5 HHS staff members said they were pushed out after raising concerns about child safety. Mr. Becerra, that's the Secretary, told the ORR director, that's you, right, that if she could not increase the number of discharges, he would find someone who could. And then he went on to say that if Henry Ford had run his plants like this, he would never have become famous and rich. This is not the way you do an assembly line. Get the kids out, run them through, get them out to those sponsors, those traffickers. Why didn't you resign when he said this? Do you think that this is morally acceptable?
Senator, I joined ORR in September of 2022. I believe that was reported prior to my arrival, but I cannot
But this
speak
is from
to-
an article this year.
I can't speak to what the secretary.
Do you think that this is
Ma'am,
acceptable to run ORR like an assembly line and to release these children
I
to
can assure you, we
traffickers?
do not run ORR like an assembly line. The safety and well-being of children is our top concern. And by
Plainly
statute-
not. Plainly, it is not your top concern because you have managed to lose 85,000 of them. The Times knows where they are, or 2/3 of them, and they're with labor traffickers. It's unbelievable. Let me just ask you this. How many kids right now, of the 430,000 approximately unaccompanied children who've crossed the border under this administration, it's an astounding number. How many are you in regular contact with right now?
Senator, we have a number of different providers across the country who
But what's the
provide
number? What's the
different-
number? How many of you are you in? You said child welfare is your top concern. What's the number?
I don't have the specific numbers.
How do you not know? Why
Because-
would you come to this hearing and not know?
Respectfully, if you would like us to provide comprehensive case management to children after they're released from our care, so we can report.
Respectfully, I would like you to do your job and not release children to human traffickers. Respectfully, that's what I would like. I'd like you not facilitate the largest child trafficking ring in American history. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here. This is really pretty remarkable testimony coming from you all, listening to what you've had to say. Basically, we've got a broken system. You don't know how to fix it. Money's not going to solve this problem, Ms. Nanda. You don't know the numbers. You don't know the law to enforce the law. So what comes across is that we've got a Homeland Security team here that doesn't believe in securing the homeland because you don't care enough to go deep enough into the issue to be able to define the problem and be able to fix it. Now, Ms. Marcos, I'm going to come to you because I've written Secretary Becerra twice about these children that they just can't find. Now, first letter, he got Acting Assistant Secretary Jeff Hill to send a non-response to my office. And then I sent another letter, and I haven't heard anything from him. I have asked that he come to the committee and talk to us about what has happened with these 85,000 children, where they are, and why efforts are not being made to find them and to be certain that they are being cared for. But there's no response to that because there again, you all believe in open borders. Your goal is not to secure the country and the border. Your goal is to just let everybody come on in and to hell with this trying to find 85,000 kids. You didn't vet the sponsors right. You did not do an FBI background check. Imagine that. You loosen what is required of people, and then you want to come here and say, we need more money so we can do our job. All right, Ms. Director Marcos, Linda Brandmiller, do you know that name? And
I'm
keep your
aware.
mic on.
I'm aware of that name.
You're aware of that name. And Jaylyn Solong, you know that name?
Yes.
Okay. And you know that both of these women were whistleblowers. And both of these women were fired for being a whistleblower. Are you aware of that?
Senator,
Quickly, my time's running out. Fast, go.
I'm not aware of the specifics.
You're
of
not
those
aware
facts.
of the specifics. Do you know who approved this retaliation against the whistleblowers? You do not know.
Senator, I cannot speak to the specifics.
You can't
of-
speak to the specifics. Okay, was the secretary notified about the urgent situation developing in the department and that these children were being released to potentially exploitative sponsors. Did anybody pay attention to that? Or did you care? Was it 9 to 5, draw a paycheck, go on? We don't care. We're not concerned about an open border. We're not concerned about protecting children. What is your job? You're the Office of Refugee Resettlement. And you're not going to follow up on where these children are and who has custody of these children? Why did you accept the responsibility to be in charge if you're not going to do your job and protect these children? You don't have an answer to that. You don't know why you accepted the responsibility.
Senator, I would be happy
This is why
to
we need the
speak about this,
secretary
but
to
you're
come.
not giving me an opportunity.
Oh, no, I gave you the, tell me, why'd you take the job?
I took the job because I'm a humanitarian. I've spent my life in
You're
this
a
work.
humanitarian who
We
can't
have-
find 85,000 children and don't give a ripping flip about where they are or what is going on in their precious lives. Is that what you're telling me?
That is a mischaracterization of everything that we do. I have tried to explain, but I am not given the opportunity.
Take the time, 25 seconds.
Thank
You
you, I
go.
appreciate that. When a child is released from our care, there are a number of ways that they can continue to receive services. We attempt the safety and well-being call for every child who's been released. There is no obligation for a child or a sponsor to answer the call. There's reasons why they may not want to answer a call from the government.
Oh, for
Additionally,
heaven's sakes,
please-
they're
please,
being
may I-
paid to take these children?
They're
And
not-
there's no reason
they're
for
not-
them to
They're
answer
not
the
being
phone?
paid- They're not being paid to take these children. Sorry. May I
Yeah, they are.
finish, please?
Yeah, they are. Go
They
ahead.
also, post-release services, over 50% of our children, we are working hard to get post-release services for all children. We are over 50% right now. That is another way to have a trusted adult in these children's lives. Legal services is another way, and we are expanding. We are providing more legal
Okay,
services
my
than we
time
ever.
has expired, and your
thank you.
answers are incomplete. I've got 2 more questions I will submit for the record. Mr. Morant, I have one for you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all of you for being here. Ms. Dunn-Marcos, I'd like to start with you. And I've got a lot of material to cover, so if possible, I'd like to have you confine your answers to yes or no, if possible. So let me summarize some of what I understand about this process, about the ORR process. Now, once you get a child, you start looking for a sponsor, or alternatively, a sponsor may come to you. And then you do some kind of a precursory background check to figure out what's going on, to see if they've got any convictions in the United States. You don't ask if the sponsor is here legally. You don't check in the sponsor's home country if the person is not originally from the United States, to see if they are wanted there for a crime or have been convicted there of a crime. You don't come with local law enforcement. You seldom, if ever, do any kind of a home visit. If they don't answer the phone after a month or so, then you consider your job done. Given that you cannot remove a child once you've placed her with a sponsor, wouldn't you agree that vetting on the front end should be increasingly more vigorous and not less? And shouldn't a home visit and conferring with local law enforcement be the bare minimum that is done rather than the entirety of what you do?
Thank you for those questions, Senator. I think that we have thorough vetting processes in place. We have child welfare experts throughout the country. We believe a child is best in a family, with a family in a community, not in a congregate care setting.
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that. But given what you don't do, that's what I find alarming. I don't doubt that you do some things, but what you don't do is alarming. That's why it shouldn't be surprising to us. This New York Times article that my colleague Senator Cornyn referred to, that indicating that HHS has lost contact altogether with more than 85,000 children. 85,000 children that this administration has negligently placed with all but unknown sponsors, and now ORR has no earthly idea where these children are. And when asked about this, you recently passed the buck entirely and said, aside from the 30 to 37-day follow-up call, you, quote, do not monitor or track the whereabouts of children after they're released from your care, close quote. So am I understanding this correctly, that they're not lost because you're not legally responsible to know where any of them are after you place them, yes or no?
Thank you, Senator. I want to clarify that ORR is not a law enforcement agency or an investigative agency.
I don't doubt that.
We-
I'm not accusing you of that. I'm saying you don't know where they are, and now you're disclaiming responsibility. Of the
Senator-
430,000 unaccompanied children, the vulnerable unaccompanied children who have crossed over our border in the last 34 months since President Biden took office, what percentage of those children's whereabouts can you tell me with any degree of certainty?
Senator, respectfully, I want to state again that it is not accurate to say we have lost, that we have lost them.
Okay,
There are
what
a
about my
number-
question? What percentage can you tell us where they are?
I don't have those figures directly in front of me.
Will you get those to us?
I will take that back to
Okay,
the team. But
let me tell you what's happening to them. Because clearly, you either don't know or you're not saying. They're being trafficked for sex. Doctors Without Borders has repeatedly told us that at a minimum, 30% of the young women and of the children who make this dangerous trek across our southern border to it and then across it are sexually abused on their journey. There are other entities that have come up with much higher estimates, some of them double that or more. Can you give us any idea how many of the 430,000 children who have entered our country under the Biden administration have been trafficked either en route or after they leave your care? Any idea at all? Any rough estimate at all? Any approximation of how many of them?
Senator, one is one too many. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but anytime we have a flag for a child in our care, we make a referral. Within 24 hours, we are referring to appropriate authorities, HSI, our Office for Trafficking in Persons. If we really want to change this narrative, we want to provide post-release services and legal services to every child. Thank you.
My time's expired, but look, the sheer volume of this, coupled with the estimates that I've never heard you refute, are that we're talking about probably hundreds of thousands of them who have been trafficked for sex and who have been sexually abused. This is wrong. It's wrong that we set up a system that encourages and then allows and then promotes and perpetuates this process that enriches drug cartels and does so at the expense of child sex trafficking, and it must end. Thank you.